Let's talk. Let's talk. Let's talk.
You know that feeling when you have worked hard and built a solid career and done everything right, yet a piece of paper decides whether you can truly settle down, isn't it? Imagine putting yourself buying a home, switching jobs, or even planning for a kid's future because you are stuck in an endless wave of green card. The uncertainty, frustrating. The lack of control, even worse. And for Indian professionals in the US, this isn't just a possibility. It's a reality that we live with every single day. And if you're nodding right now, trust me, you're not alone because that's exactly what's today's episode and so important. So first of all, welcome everyone to Let's Talk podcast. If you are for the first time visiting this podcast, this show is for thinking human beings, people who are not looking for quick fix solutions, but real and meaningful directions to navigate life's biggest challenges. And if that sounds like you, be sure to check out our other episodes. Uh, the, I think the good and the bad part depends on your perspective is that we explore all the topics under the sun. So whether it's AI, it's cybersecurity, which is my technical expertise, mindset, career growth, health and life sciences, job strategies, and much more. And again, our goal is to give you some insights to think differently and take actions. So now let's get to today's conversation. Many of you know, and if you do not, that I was fortunate to be an EB1A recipient. And over the years, I try to assist and help and provide our perspective to different people around to navigate in this process. But again, immigration isn't just about a legal paperwork. It's about strategy. It's about positioning yourself correctly and understanding the path others have taken to get there. And that's why in my pursuit of sharing those real stories and actionable insights, I have reached out, or I would say I stumbled upon one of the person here in LinkedIn when I say that, oh, it seems like she's making waves in this space. The Dr. Aditi Paul. Dr. Paul, and I'll see that whether she would like me to tell Aditi or Dr. Paul. It just, I would say, based on my what I have seen so far, brilliant communicator, researcher, and professor. She's also founder of Dr. Paul and Company, where she helps the immigrants qualify for the talent-based pathways on the EB1A, EB1, EB2, I guess. See, it's been a while. Actually, I looked into all these categories. The NIW. Now, if you're still looking more, she also runs a YouTube channel under her name, Dr. Aditi Paul, where she tries to simplify those complex topics with clarity. And because I'm also a big fan of humor, I see some of those humor as well, and gives platform to the people who present their whole perspective of how exactly the process looks like. So yeah, I would definitely recommend looking to her channel as well. Apart from that, she is also being featured to the top media outlets like the Washington Post, Huffington Post, Telegraph, the Business Insider, so on and so forth. So this is the way actually it tells the impact she's making and shaping those conversations with those individuals in terms of communication and obviously the immigration. So before we dive, or I would say not before, I would say today, we are diving into her journey, strategies, and take control that can help you to take control of your immigration process. So sit back, relax, and let's have some conversation with Dr. Paul. Aditi Paul, how would you like to go ahead? Welcome to the show.
For the next 1 hour, I want you to solely call me Dr. Paul. No, I'm kidding. Please call me Aditi. There's a running joke in academia where there are when you're Indian, right? So let me give you a very Indian example. Where are you from in India? Lucknow. Okay, I'm from Calcutta, and should not be speaking Hindi to you, given you're from Lucknow, and given that I'm from Calcutta, the ridge is quite significant. But when you say you're from India, and then for an outsider, India is a monolith. But then when you go inside India, now you're like, oh, where are you from? Oh, you're from Lucknow. Oh, you're from East India. I'm from West India. Like the divisions keep happening. The same thing happens in academia where, yeah, you're a PhD, but there is a running joke inside PhD where social science researchers like myself take the word doctor very seriously. But real researchers, that's an inside joke in academia, like the science ones, the physics ones, and the mathematicians and the chemistry PhDs, they will go to conferences and they'll say, just call me Joe. They don't have any hang-ups as such of calling them doctors. So I am not going to feed into that stereotype of social science researchers and like insist you call me doctor. Please call me Aditi. And that's what I prefer. But thank you so much for having me on this podcast, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Oh, definitely. Obviously, when I reached out, I saw some of your posts and saw some communications and how people were engaging. So I was like, definitely, you must have that perspective about the EB1A or EB1B, or I think EB1C as well. A lot of people in my technical profession know only EB1C.
Right.
They were not even aware. So let's get started. As you've already mentioned, you are from Calcutta or Kolkata in India.
Yes.
Uh, what's your journey looks like? Why are we even discussing this?
Oh my gosh, is this a therapy session? um, that's an interesting question because I was on another podcast and I mentioned that in that other podcast as well. That the running script of my life is I did not want to do something, and somehow life just put me on that road of doing that when every part of my being did not want to do that. So that's how I came to the US. I did not want to come here. And I think my sister is the one to blame. And I use the word blame very consciously because she somehow sold me on the idea of America with one sentence, and that was, you need to come to the US because over here professors actually respond to your emails. I'm like, what do you like? That's the biggest selling point of the US because we've all been a part of the Indian education system. And when I was a student in India, I got my bachelor's and master's in computer science. Did not want to do it, but I really wanted to study in St. Xavier's because Karan Johar made St. Xavier's look really cool. So I thought I should go to St. Xavier's in Calcutta. This is going to be a very erudite conversation if you don't all know.
I think you are right because I have no idea what St. Xavier was up until I've seen that movie. I don't know which was that.
You are thinking about Kuch Kuch Hota Hai.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but I know St. Xavier.
Yes.
He was pretty successful in marketing that particular.
Yes, and I really wanted to. It did not matter what I studied, but I just wanted to study in St. Xavier's. And turns out I applied for 5 different fields, and the only field I was taking was computer science. So that's why I studied computer science because I wanted to be a Xaverian because that sounded cool at the time. But I hated computer science, did not want to study computer science, but what a joke. Now I only work with people who are software, like not only work with, but a large chunk of my clients are software engineers. So somehow I'm back in that zone again. But I didn't want to study computer science, but I was stuck there. And then I came to the US to visit my sister who just had her first baby. And she told me that, hey, I know you want to study something in communication. You've been rattling on and on about it. And taking up dialogue straight from Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, where the young Anjali says, मुझे singing or dancing का बड़ा शौक है. So I had a shock of talking on stage. Like I loved the performing arts. I was an MC in college. I used to, for a hot second, I really wanted to be an RJ. So I saw communication as that it's an avenue for me to be able to go into the performing arts. And that's what I thought I was getting myself in. So my sister said, "Oh yeah, sure. Like that's communication. Just go and talk to some professor, see if you can come to the U.S." And that's how I came to the U.S. And the reason that I got a PhD again, did not want to get a PhD, but thank God for my sister's wise counsel, whose counsel based on which I also pursued EB1. She told me that go for PhD because you get funding. In masters, you don't get funding. And in hindsight, that was such a fantastic decision, not just for funding, but the cascading effect it had on my EB1, as well as the bullet that I averted, which was 1 year on OPT, because it was a non-STEM program. Communication is not STEM. So it was a very, very smart decision that my sister told me. I don't know if she thought so much about that. Uh, but that was the basis on which I came to the US. So that's the genesis of my incredibly inspiring story.
So let me ask you this. Obviously, some people stumble upon something because the way how the destiny unfolds. So you mentioned that, okay, you came here for PhD, but then how was that process that, okay, you came here, you stayed, you started studying and all those. How you made a point that, okay, this is the place I have to be a permanent resident or I have to work on green card? I mean, there are a lot of people who just come study, do research and go back.
Yeah. Again, that was not the place. That is not the reason why I got my permanent residency. To be honest with you, I still don't see myself living in the US for a long haul. I don't. Um, because there's so much to see in the world. So much to see in the world. Like the last thing I want to do is be in New Jersey in February. Like that's not something that my dreams are made of. But I posted a video very recently where I said that I had to realize that your decision of wanting to get a green card or wanting to be a permanent resident in the US, you have to be able to discern fact from fiction. And what I mean by that is you're not getting a permanent residency to become a permanent resident. You want to pursue permanent residency to get yourself out of incremental danger, because that's what temporary visas do. They're temporary for a reason. It's good on a temporary basis. And what I was progressively realizing is the problem was not with the temporary visa. The problem was I was trying to find a permanent solution through that temporary visa, and that was just not feasible. I wanted to go in and out of the country when I pleased. I wanted to take up jobs that I wanted. I wanted to live freely because that's what I wanted to savor when I came to the US. And that was progressively what I was realizing. Like, why do I like the US? Why do I like my life in the US so much? Because number one, it gave me freedom to explore. And that's a big thing as a woman.
Yeah.
When you make the decision of going back to India as an Indian man, and when you make the decision of going back to India as an Indian woman, it's a significant difference because life is not the same. Right? Do you have a sister?
Yes.
Okay. I did not have a brother, but I had my cousins. And the first road trip that my cousin did with another male cousin of mine was in class 10. They were allowed to take a train and go from Calcutta to Puri. I was not. I had my first road trip when I was 23, that too in the US. Because not that my parents did not allow me to, but they were very scared for my safety, and rightfully so. So, yeah, there could be some people who are like, oh my God, India has changed so much. Great. I know it. I love it. I've been to India more times before, like on my H1B and my green card, but I'm just talking about my lived experience. So I started loving and savoring the freedom that I was able to explore in the US as a woman, as well as a professional, where I was not pigeonholed like I felt like I was pigeonholed in India, where, oh, if you get a bachelor's and master's in computer science, then you cross the pond and go to Wipro, study, do some coding, and then come back. I was like, okay, yeah, I have a bachelor's and master's in computer science. I got my PhD in communication. Now I'm doing online research. Next, I'm doing business. So that breathing space was very important to me. And I wanted more of that. I wanted that to sustain. And what did not help was that I was doing all of this in New York City. And I always say that that my decision to want to be in the US was less about being in the US. My decision of wanting to be in the US had a lot to do with New York as a place where it was easy to say bye to America, but it was really hard to say bye to New York City. So all of those things kind of came together. My desire to want to hold on to my professional freedom, my desire to hold on to my day-to-day experience and living freely in that, and also my little crush on New York City. All of those came together to want me to be here permanently, or at least find a permanent solution.
Yes, yes. I think there's so many things to unwrap here. And few things I can resonate as well because we used to live in New Jersey as well. 2 years ago, I moved to Florida.
Mm.
And yeah, I understand New York City. Obviously, when I came down and when I saw the actual condition of New York City, in a way of not the technology wise, but the overall the crowd. I mean, New York City people say that's not in America because it's totally different. If you see the other parts of America, which I was fortunate to travel around 40 states and half of Canada before COVID because of my because of my job. I can see that it's drastic different. But
Oh, wow. I mean, New York feels more like home than Michigan ever did. Because, everything is so pristine in Michigan. You have like these huge roads. You sell Starbucks coffee. There's like a foot difference between the person standing before you and after you. There's so much personal distance. And New York is Calcutta, but a little fancy. New York is Mumbai, but a little fancy, right? Like everybody is within each other's business. Rent is so high. Every day you're fighting for your life to justify why you're paying so much. Uh, but it's a charming city, and I wanted more of that. Again, I live in Jersey City. I don't live in New York City because people will come for my throat and say, well, don't be fraudulent. You live in New Jersey. Don't put NYC NJ in your Instagram bio because everybody knows that you're in NJ. So, yeah.
I look into them, and that's what we generally say: New York Metro region.
New York Metropolitan Region. That's exactly
So, so cool. So yeah, I mean, what you said, there are a lot of things, but I'll try to kind of, because I just want to focus on some of the EB1. We can go to that route and maybe some other time about your journey. So, okay. So come to that place that you start working on your PhD. You said communication. Is that, and you also mentioned that you were pretty comfortable in public speaking. And would that the reason? Because there must be people who are watching this, trying to pursue PhD or any other degree in that perspective. How you chose that, and does it have any implication from the thing what they would like to apply from EB1 or any similar categories?
So, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're saying, did public speaking have a role to play in my PhD in communication? And if so, did that help in some way to get my EB1? Is that the question?
Yes.
Okay. So I am still struggling to explain what is communication to people and have realized that I don't understand what is communication. Because communication, the closest cousin that we are used to, especially when I'm like born in India and in the Indian education system, is mass communication. So when you think about communication, you think about mass communication. You're thinking radio, you're thinking advertising, you're thinking public speaking. But what I've realized after getting a PhD in communication is that's a very small part of it. There are other things inside communication. And communication, the best way to explain it is like oxygen. Like you will know the absence of it when it's taken away from you. But when it's there, you don't really think about it. So that's how I think about communication, because when I got into the PhD program in communication, I wrote the dumbest statement of purpose one can ever write when you say why you want to get a PhD in communication, I said, oh, I read this Dale Carnegie's book, How to Influence and Influence People. And I want to be that person. Hence, I want to study communication. Lo and behold, I mean, I'm still glad that they took me in that program, given the stalwarts of communication research that I found. But I realized that communication research is very different than communication and practice. So when you're thinking about communication and research, you're thinking political communication, you're thinking organizational communication, you're thinking persuasive communication, you're thinking interpersonal communication. There are different factions of communication. So I took my time to realize that what I really like in communication is interpersonal communication, and that can take up many shapes and forms. The shape and form that I chose to take up was to study the impact of technology on these human relationships that existed before technology was included, but how is technology shaping those relationships? And the technology that I focused on was online dating apps. And that helped me in getting my green card, qualify for EB1 for sure. And where public speaking helped me, it's a nice to have, but it's not a must have, is to externalize the research that I was cultivating and externalize it to the world in a way that was understandable and could be appreciated by the common public. And that's the exact strategy that I use right now when I teach people about EB1. Same thing. Like, take something complex, do cool research on it, and then teach people who are interested.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that would be a good segue to get into some of the processes involved. So you mentioned that, I think, if I recall correctly, your sister helped you to introduce counsel for the EB1.
Mm-hmm.
How that process looks like, or what's the story behind it? Because just want to see that how those things are getting started before we get into some of the actual steps over there.
Right. Man, immigration is, the best way I can explain immigration is turning 30. In your 20s, you're so full of life. Like, कि आप parties में जा रहे हो, you're like going out for dinner, drinks, like you're just pounding alcohol, nothing is happening. You're waking up in the morning and you're just going straight to work, and then 30s hits and you're like, oh my God, that one pint of gin is like hitting me. I need to do something about it. Like, I used to eat one burger and not feel anything, but now my LDL is sky high. I need to take more. So, I mean, all the things that I just told you right now, I struggled with it. And in your 30s, and mostly so in your 40s, you have this dawn of realization that I cannot be running on autopilot anymore. Like, I need to take care of this, because what I used to be able to sustain and absorb and not feel a pinch of it, I can't take that anymore. And that's what happens in immigration as well. That when you are in the groove of things, like you've gotten yourself to the US because F1 was such a big hurdle, and then you graduate, and then getting a job is such a big hurdle. Getting a job that would sponsor you is such a big hurdle. Getting a job that would sponsor you and getting an H1B is such a big hurdle. Getting a PERM is such a big hurdle. Getting I-140 is such a big hurdle. So when you cross all those barriers, you're like, "ठीक है, चलो अभी, like, let's relax a little bit. I've earned it." Little do you know that that's not the end. That's just the beginning. And it took me some time to realize that, but it helps to have somebody who is older than you, who has hindsight. And that's where my sister came into the picture, where after I got a job as a professor in New York City, based on her insistence, I started the PERM process, got myself an I-140 through EB2, get my green card petition approved in 2016. And after that, to be honest with you, sort of I was coasting a little bit. And I'm like, ठीक है, अभी like life set है. ठीक है, let me enjoy New York City, right? Let me just spread my wings and really explore. I went on a 40-day Euro trip. Everything was happening. And then my sister said that, yo, you need to like take this seriously, because here's what happened to her. And she narrated a story, and I want to focus on this, that you want to think that you will take immigration seriously from a logical perspective. No, you're going to take immigration seriously when things get personal, because things got personal for me. It was not logic anymore, because my sister said that her husband had come to the US in 1998, and he's a extremely competent human being, an IIT, the trappings of the golden boy. IIT grad, got a degree from a good university in the US, working for a fancy mm, company, Daimler, Benz, all of that. I don't put me on that. But yeah, he was working for a big automotive company.
Mhm.
And my sister said that even though he was so competent, they put him on EB3 instead of EB2. And he didn't have enough agency, neither the know-how, to want to fight to escalate that to EB2, let alone EB1. So it's because of the trauma slash discomfort that she faced that, listen, this is what happens when you recuse control. You need to be the captain of your ship, and you need to push to improve your chances of getting a green card by telling your employer that, hey, put me on EB1, don't just let me stay on EB2. And that honestly is the reason why I pushed for EB1, because my sister had lived an experience that I did not want to live. And that's what I want to impress on your listeners, that you're going to take immigration seriously, not because the visa bulletin is saying so, not because I am saying so, not because Saurabh is saying so. You're going to take immigration seriously when shit gets real personal. And I hope it does.
Definitely. That's so true because when I did my EB1, and a lot of people were shocked because they were not even thinking about it. And on the top of that, not many people were even aware
Mhm.
that one category, and which is for Nobel laureates and Olympians. So how come we as a regular human being? And this is something one of my attorney mentioned in our earlier podcast is, you think that you are average or you are not doing something great, because most of the time it depends on what is your circle you are living in with. Who are your friends?
Mhm.
If you are a C-level person and you are only sitting and hanging out with the C-level and C-suite people, so you think that is the average, and your above average becomes a different way of looking at it. So that's why it's very important, I think, as you mentioned, is while you take experiences from your relatives, your friends, and seeing some podcasts like these or yours, we have to think deeply, like what is our goal? Do we have to live in this kind of uncertainty, or because again, a lot of, like, for example, H1B and all, these are non-immigrant visas. So this is not something given that you will be here for a long haul, or at least for a couple of years. So very, very profound statements you made. So now when you started on this, so you reached a council, is it recommended by a sister? How did you find her, him, they on that perspective?
You mean legal counsel?
Yes.
Oh, I went through my university, and there's EB1A, EB1B, EB1C, and I pursued EB1B, which was the professor route, because I was already a professor, and that was the most straightforward thing that I could do.
So okay. So can you help us explain, like, what exactly EB1, you know, two is B, sorry, right? You
Yeah.
said, yeah, looks like, and what are those challenges? Like, if it's so straightforward for the professor, so there must be a lot of professors here.
Yeah. So
Right. Right.
that's that. And it goes back to what you were saying.
Mhm.
I was talking. So for your listeners, there are 3 gradations of EB1: EB1A, EB1B, EB1C. EB1A is a larger umbrella where anybody from the business, from the arts, from athletics, from academics, anybody can apply. So EB1A is open, and you don't need a company to sponsor you. Launcher. There are many more things. We speak to a lawyer, but I'm giving you the fundamentals. EB1B, on the other hand, is exclusively kept for researchers and professors, and you need your company to back up. And EB1C is something you can Google because I don't have expertise in that.
Yeah, that is like the
Multinational company that have been just
manager, because that EB1C is pretty known for a lot of IT folks.
Yeah.
That is something pretty a common way of getting the EB1. So now the question is, from your experiences, if, for example, if someone is listening here, okay, how do I know where do I fit in, or what category do I choose uh, based on my circumstances? What is like maybe 1, 2, 3 quick steps to look into? This is one of the way you have to look into this particular category.
I would look at the prereqs. Right, I'm thinking of this as taking a course. That it takes statistics 801. Look at the syllabus and see what are the dependencies, what are the prerequisites. If you are not in a company where a large chunk, a significant part of it is dedicated to research, if you're not a researcher, if you're not a professor, then EB1B kind of rules itself out. If you're not a multinational manager, then EB1C kind of rules itself out. So what you're left with is EB1A. Go with EB1A. So that's what I would do. The simple answer is look at the prerequisites, look at the fit. If you're a good fit and if the dependencies are addressed, then go for that route. And that's the reason why I went for EB1B more than EB1A. Because again, like right now, it sounds very logical, but honestly speaking, the things that I know right now versus the things that Aditi knew back in 2019, 2018, heaven and earth difference. So I was just like, okay, fine. Everybody says U1B, let's go with the U1B. Let me pursue it with my university. And it's a whole can of worms, Saurabh, to work with the legal counsel of your company. Because I'm going to take the example of Breaking Bad. Have you ever watched Breaking Bad? Yes. You remember when Walter White got into trouble and Jesse Pinkman is helping Walter White look for a lawyer, and they come to Saul Goodman? And what did Jesse Pinkman say? They said that you don't need a criminal lawyer, you need a criminal lawyer. And that's exactly what a company lawyer is. Not a criminal lawyer, but you're going to a company lawyer. You're not going to a company lawyer, you're going to a company lawyer, which means that the lawyer is representing the company. They have the company's benefits and the company's worth over yours. You're a small fish in a big pond. You're not the thing that they care about. You're not the person that they care about. That's not the first thing that they're representing. First person, sorry. If you're, not to get too political, but when you're so dehumanized all through your immigration journey, sometimes you call yourself a thing rather than a person, which is a deeper conversation for another time. But that's what I went for. I went to the lawyer, and again, the lawyer was very conservative in her assessment of my profile. And it goes back to what you were talking about, that when you're surrounded by people who are of the same caliber and more, the level of comparison changes. And that is exactly why very recently I talked to a professor at Yale. She's a professor at Yale. Let's just take a pause over there. It's one thing to be a PhD at Yale, but if you want to be a professor in one of these R1 universities, my gosh, I don't even want to know about your scholarly profile because I'm going to feel so crappy about mine. So she overcame that boundary, and now she went and approached her lawyer from the university to go for her EB1B, and the lawyer straight up said no, because her ranking did not match up to all the other Yale professors. So she was not extraordinary enough in that regard. So she was straight up rejected. At least my lawyer gave me a chance. So she was open to that conversation, but she threw the same crap every we hear anywhere, that, oh, Dr. Paul, you do not have 300 citations. And that's, now I realize why that is such a deal breaker and why that assessment is flawed. And I'm not villainizing lawyers, but this is the problem that I am solving for. That your lawyer or the USCIS officer is not the subject matter expert. You are the subject matter expert. So if the lawyer or the USCIS officer does not have the bandwidth, neither the intention to want to look deeply into your profile, which honestly they don't have time, they don't have enough skin in the game, you now have to do the work to take them behind the scenes and say that, hey, I might not have these citations, but whatever I have, look at the true impact of that. So, for example, when you're talking about software engineers have this tendency of saying, I developed, I designed, I coded. If you portray your work like that, then don't be surprised if the other person is very dismissive of your work. So you really have to tell the story behind how you developed, what you developed, why you developed, in what way you developed, what decisions did you take when you developed this, what impact did it have. Once you take the time to dig deep and do that open heart surgery on your work and excavate its true impact and tell that compelling of a story, then you have to listen to what the other person is saying. Then you get a fair assessment. But if you don't do that work and you just keep it superficial level, don't be surprised if the other person will also judge you superficially.
Yeah, that's so. I think I can totally resonate. And one thing I would say that it goes back to your conversation about some of the persuasion in a way that how exactly you have to make a compelling argument. And at the same time, I would also say that when I went through all this process of EB1A by myself, it changed me personally as well. Because before that, never ever in my life, and how many people sit down and think about yourself?
Mhm.
Like, what is your accomplishment? Because we've always been in a reactive mode. And that is also one of the things why I started podcasts, because we have to just slow down and think. And this is something which really changed, because then when I started working on it, I found that there are so many things to offer, but I never take a pause. I never look back. And as you mentioned that you always had the luxury of being seen in hindsight and join the dots. But if you don't take action, that's where the whole thing's pause. So now, in your perspective, what you said is about the whole processes of like looking into different categories. So is it I would say in summarized version, is it a good way to say that if you are not a manager and if you do not have a professor or equivalent professional degree or whatever the case may be, EB1A would be the choice to look out. And even if you have EB1B, and if you see some challenges in your organization, which you rightly mentioned, because they want to de-risk themselves as well and have less and less rejection from that perspective, then you still can go to EB1A.
Mm.
That there's statement, or you want to add something here?
There's always so many caveats to add. Because I don't want to just broad brushstroke and say, oh, if you're not a manager, if you're not a researcher, then don't go. Because I have talked with people who do not fit those profiles and have been able to crack those things. So, for example, I spoke with a senior software engineer in NVIDIA who was able to get his EB1B. I spoke with an executive or a director at a beverage company, not a PhD, not a researcher per se, but was able to pursue EB1B. I have met senior research engineers in organizations like Google who have been able to get an EB1B. I have met data scientists and business analysts who have been able to pursue EB1C. So who am I to say if you don't have these titles, you're not? So I would defer it to speak with a lawyer. What are your options? But I will say this, that having been in this space and researching and learning about this space, what I have realized is EB1A gives you the most amount of agency, where you're not dependent on any company, where you're not dependent on any employer. It gives you the most amount of agency where you're calling the shots. But the flip side of that is, because it's not focused like EB1B, which is primarily for researchers and professors, like we talked about, and EB1C, which are primarily for managers, this is open to all. You're competing with everybody. There is a person who is a sound mixer for Adele, who was born in France. This is an actual case study. He's also applying for EB1. There could be Michael Jordan of basketball applying for EB1. And then you're a senior software engineer from a FANG company who's applying for his EB1, or her EB1. So the playing field is much more broader, and the stakes are higher. But the agency that you have over your profile is also much higher. So you have to pick.
You have to pick. So obviously, I mean, the whole intention was just to see that where to start, because I think 90% of the people, just to make the things perfect, overthink and never starts. So you're right. Obviously, you have to start with looking at some options and look into the lawyers. I think one of the other important thing here is also to see that you have to reach out to the people, like maybe the lawyers, or seeing all these podcasts, or to you directly as well, as you have a big community as well, to find what options we have. Because sometimes I had an example that there was one guy who was just doing a database migration in a DMV, in one of the local DMV. Now, database migration is one of the very common tasks by any of the engineers. And if someone can resonate, listen to that. If you think that you would be a part of the extraordinary skills, maybe that person would be laughing. That's so common. The thing that person did working with the lawyer was make a strong case. I think it's all about creating a strong case and thinking from the side of the educators, like how exactly they are looking at this case. And as you mentioned before, how you craft your story, is it compelling enough or not? And that's where some of your experts requirement comes into the picture, that how you take those things and make it. For example, he mentioned that because of this database migration, the DMV job would be easier to cater the needs of 5 million people on that particular city. So that shows the impact that what you're doing impacts 5 million people in that neighborhood or that county. So that shows the way how you're portraying and write. And again, coming back to your communication styles as well, that how you write the things that the reader can resonate and understand and make an.
Exactly. What you just talked about is what I do with my clients, that I play zoom in, zoom out with them. So when I'm talking about what problem did you solve, I am zooming out. And when I talk about how you solve the problem, I am zooming in. Because when you zoom out, you see the larger picture. When you zoom out, you see the cascading effects. Not just A leads to B, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. The way I think about it is, you remember that phone carrier back home in India, Hutch?
Yes.
Do you remember the tagline? With the little ball.
The pop or something that,
Wherever you go,
yeah, where you, yeah.
wherever you go, a network follows. So that's how you need to think about your work. That you've done the work, but how did it add to the bigger picture? So, you developed this and you shipped it to the client. Okay, what was the client able to do with that? Okay, what you were able to do with this? What was the end user able to do with that? So you have to tell that entire picture. You need to zoom out. And then when you zoom out, now you've sold to the USCIS officer. Now you've sold to the lawyer that you're doing something significant. Now comes the zooming in part, that how did you solve it? And the question I ask my clients is, well, if I take away Saurabh and I put a 12th grade graduate, college dropout person, right, or a junior developer in the place of a staff developer, how would they have solved it? Would they have solved it differently? They're like, oh yeah, of course. Like, they would not have thought about this as this. They would have taken like 12 months. They would have taken so many dependencies, etc., what have you. I'm like, okay, now let's talk about that, because that's your unique way of solving the problem. So you need to be able to zoom in on that. And once you do that, I love the light bulb moment that happens, where people are like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't realize I was doing this. And I'm like, yes, I am, sir. You're doing this. It's not fluff to call you extraordinary, because you truly are doing extraordinary work. You just don't know it yet.
Yes, yes, that's so true. Actually, as I mentioned, that it was a life changing event for me as well. So, coming back to this, okay, we decided this is one of the categories I have to go through. What are some of the possible, uh, I would say, potholes or challenges that might they envision? Because I had my fair share, and there was one point where I was just quitting. That I don't want to do this. What would you say on that part, and how people can overcome? Because everyone must be having those. Because this is not something you are doing for your life. Most of them, at least, thinking, finding, and then again getting some rejection. No, this doesn't work. Then again, you go back to the drawing table. So, what do you think about that part?
So I would categorize them into three types of challenges that you're going to face. Number one is procedural challenges. Number two is process challenges. And number three is personality, psychological challenges. Three P's. The
Mhm.
first one, procedural challenges. What are the procedural challenges? That's the end game where you have submitted your petition, you receive an RFE, you receive a denial, you're backlogged, the visa bulletin all of a sudden retrogresses, gets stuck. Those are procedural challenges. Right? That's coming from the agencies. They're coming from your lawyer, right? So sometimes lawyers will bench you for 4 months. What can you do? Right? You've retained this lawyer. Those are procedural challenges. Then you have the process challenge where you are building your profile. For example, one of the common problems is you need letters of recommendation to from experts in the field who can explain, give context, and justify how your contributions have been significant to the field. Now that's a process challenge where you are waiting for that person to write a letter for their sign off. They are going through bureaucratic challenges where they can be write it in letterhead or not. Those are process challenges. Other process challenges could be where you have reached out to editors of magazines, you've reached out to editors of journals asking for feedback, you've reached out to hackathons and you have asked, can I get an opportunity? And you're stumbling, you're waiting for them. Those are process challenges. You're going to go through them as well. But then there are psychological challenges where it's like building out muscle, where you're going to the gym, you're taking all the protein, you're doing all the right stuff, but yet the scale is not moving and you want to give up because it's too much. You miss the comfort of what was. You don't like the discomfort, especially when it's not reaping the results that you wanted to reap in the timeline that you wanted to reap. So you want to give up. So that's a psychological challenge where you're like, oh, you know what? I was right. This is not worth it. I'm just going to have to wait. Those are some psychological challenges. Now, each of those challenge has a remedy. You need to tap into those remedies.
Yeah, I mean, always just linger across. So maybe I'll just take one more or see one more episode on Netflix, and before I get down and think about writing something. I mean, uh, it's and sometimes, as you mentioned, that while you do not get some letter sign or something, it's very easy to again go back to your couch and start watching or binge. Again, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I'm just saying that how we prioritize, and it's a difficult path, and that is the reason. In my case as well, initially when people get to know that this is possible, I provided some of the help to around 20 to 25 people. And when I backtracked, only two of them even started working, forget about to the end state. And I think only one ended up getting EB1A. Rest were like, yeah, that's good. But it was just a sugar rush. And then everything goes down back to, and I think that again, I just want to reinforce you mentioned before is it has to be personal. Immigration is because when everything is going fine, people don't care. They wish, but they don't want to take actions.
Right.
And I think this is, and some people have also met that the kids are near the age of the college and all those. Those are some of their factors which they do that. For me, it was mostly around business. So I would say that you have to find something out to get that. And again, it's a big thing where you don't have those visa anxiety because a lot of decisions are held back just because of this. I think oh, I can move anywhere. The freedom. I think that is one of the best things. The freedom of choice. Because, for example, people say that, oh, I want to have financial freedom. But did you even talk to people who have financial freedom? When you talk to them, they'll say that every day I wake up, I spend my time 1 hour, 2 hour for reading book or daydreaming or thinking about it. But the person who has to go wake up and kind of transit for an hour to go for a job, they don't think about those things. And
Who are these financially independent people who are waking up and just thinking about life? I want to meet them. Can you hook me up with some of these people? Enjoying life. That's how they read life. You're not living in existential dread. What do you mean?
I know. So I know people, and that is something I have my goals as well, which I always broadcast. That I don't want to be a billionaire, but I want to be a financial free. Which there's a difference on that. So yeah, coming back to the topic. So as you mentioned, we already chosen that. Okay, one of the path we discuss about some of the different impacts and procedural and psychological. Now, can you explain in a way how your life changed? I mean, you mentioned about freedom, but do you have any anecdotal experience about the way you would have thought this when you were in a non-immigrant category versus now? I know, or maybe one of your clients example, because I just want to give a picture of those examples. If someone can resonate that, okay, I understand all this thing, I get a green card. So what?
Yeah. Oh, what does life look before and after a green card? I'll tell you what my father asked me when I got my green card. So I got my green card in hand in April 17 or eight, I don't know, some such around that time. What I do remember is when I got my EAD in March, and that was after a roller coaster because my H-1B was expiring, my I-140 was approved, it was ported to the 2016 EB2 date, and I still was waiting for my green card. My medical, everything is done. I-485, and my H-1B is expiring in April. That has not come yet. So my lawyer had to write a letter to Kirsten Gillibrand or Gillibrand telling her that if my client, Dr. Paul, does not get this, Pace University students at that time, I was teaching there, will not be able to finish their semester. And that gave a final push to my green card, and my EAD came through. And I had gone through hell and back so much during that time, not just through green card, but also for my tenureship, other things that happened at work. I was like, pardon my French, I was like, fuck this, I'm going home. I don't care if my lawyer says, oh, don't go, just wait for your green card. I'm like, screw that. I have my EAD. I am going home. So I bought my ticket to go to India on 6th May, some such. And I remember getting an email from my lawyer saying that, oh, Dr. Paul, did you already leave? By the way, your green card is in the mail. Like, so it so happened that I'm flying out day after tomorrow or tomorrow, I don't remember. And I get my green card this evening in the mail. And you picture, right? Like you picture that moment of when you hold your green card, like clouds are going to part, the sea is going to divide, like bhuchal aa jayega, and then you're holding like that green card. Then you hold that, and it was so anticlimactic for me because I felt nothing. I just felt nothing. There was no emotion associated with it whatsoever. On the flip side, though, when I went home this time, I was not able to sleep. My mind was still reeling. And my dad could not fathom for the life of him what had happened. He said, well, you got your tenure. You've been crying about that. You got your green card. You've been crying about that. Oh, why can't you relax? And that's what I was unable to do, physically unable to do. So I had to go to the doctor. I had to go to a psychologist. I had to go to a psychiatrist and seek help, not to function more, but to function less.
Mm.
And that's how life has changed after a green card, because I was in fight or flight mode for so long. I have been fighting for my survival for so long that I don't want to do more. I just want to be for the first time in my life. And I want to do things that make me happy. Italians have found out a really good phrase for this. It's called dolce far niente, which is the sweetness of doing nothing. And that's what I do. I have focused my work on building content for EB1 because I know what it can do for you. I work with select a few people every single month who want to expedite this journey. And that's exactly where I'm focusing on right now.
Yes, yes. I think just to add that, it's if your glass is already full with anxiety, uncertainty, you cannot think anything else. I mean, you are right. Like once you get a green card, I still remember that day. On a humor side, I even recorded opening all those things and I just saved there. I don't know what I just did that because at that time I was starting the podcast and everything I was trying to record, which maybe never be out. But the thing is,
You should post it.
yeah, maybe I can make it dramatic.
Yes. Just like,
So
don't.
I was in New Jersey at that time. And what I try to say is you still wake up at the time in the morning, you prepare breakfast, go, and everything will be just like that. But the thing about the anxiety or anything which is related to the decision making processes, it's a big way because now your horizons have expanded. If I say someone here to go anywhere outside US and if they are in the visa, and even though if they have all the right visa, they don't have to stamping, do anything. The very first thing would be where are we going and what happens if I come back?
Right.
And then the anxiety of talking to the immigration officer at the time. So these small things. And the last thing I would like to mention is if you're at the prime age of your life where this is a time, and this is also one of the things which I did. I said, if I get a green card when I'm 55, 60 years old, what's the point? My whole life is gone. And now I just have to kind of maybe just slow down. But my prime time where I can make decisions, where I can make risks, I kind of pursue my risky endeavors, it's just gone. So what's the point of staying in the US? So I totally relate to what you mentioned. So let's get to the next, or I would say towards the final side of the house is what's your key takeaway after listening all this? People have listened to your story. We have discussed about some of the categories, which is again those which is not the regular ones, right? Which takes it can be expedited if you do properly those processes. We discuss about some of the challenges. We discuss about all the process. Obviously, you can say how to, and I would encourage people to review your YouTube channel where some of your clients have provided it. Still, if people are undecided, I was there. I'm sure you were there. No matter, because not about the information. In the world of AI and the internet, you have all the information out there. So it's not about the information, but still the indecisiveness, self-doubt. What is your final point if people are all good, but they're still undecided at this point?
Undecided, as in, I don't know if EB1 is worth it.
Yeah, to take action. They all very good. Aditi and Saurabh, they have greatly provided all the perspective. Kurt, let me just take on my next office call.
You telling me something?
Yes. So I'm asking, sorry if it's not very clear. Well, I'm saying that I'm asking that if people are still undecided, what is the next best action to take it? I'm not saying the next 10 moves. What is the next move you would like to recommend, at least to take it forward, their decision to pursue?
Okay. So I'll tell you how I would have looked at it, because I know that sentiment right now where people are going to believe what they want to believe, quite honestly. Some if you've already decided on something, you're going to find a data point to just support it. So if you have decided that, what is the फायदा of doing it? Look, it's backlogged right now. क्या होगा इतना सब कुछ करके? जाना ही है वापस, चले जाएंगे. We all of a sudden we become like that झोला वाला, where we are just like, हाँ, भटकते हुए बादलों की तरह मैं भी चली जाऊंगी. We become very philosophical that way, just to recuse the responsibility that I need to do something about it. I get that you're going to find data points to support. But if you want to rephrase this, right, let's recalibrate it. I'm talking as a 30-year-old, 38 to be precise, where after you have done the work, where you have gotten a degree, you got a job, and you're now in a job and you're just doing the same thing over and over again, life just loses its charm. Right? You're living that, for the lack of a better word, घिसा पिटा जिंदगी. Like, ये सब, if सुबह को उठो, ये करो, वो करो, etc. And sometimes we try to find new things. That's where the midlife crisis of running a marathon comes in. That's the midlife crisis of just buying a flashy car comes in. So think about EB1 as a midlife crisis. Where
Marathon. So
I'm pointing my fingers right along because we miss the feeling of doing something new. That's why we pursue an MBA all of a sudden. That's why we run a marathon. That's why we do all these, take a certification, because we miss the kick. We miss the kick of doing something new, of learning something new. I would take EB1 as that midlife existential crisis that you're having. And if it works out, it works out. But if it doesn't, go back to the thing that you were living. That's how I see it. That's the reason why I'm even learning guitar. I have learned nothing in the last 1.5 years. But I'm working with a coach, and every time I show up, I'm just like, Anjal, I did not practice. But you know what? Even with that nothingness, I know now how to do spider crawls on the guitar. I know now how to hold a bar chord. I know now how to finger pluck. It's not really good. I'm really bad at it. I'm not going to be able to play my guitar in front of you. But it feels nice that, okay, I'm doing something new. It's uncomfortable, but I'm doing something new. It's sparking some sort of something. Yeah, something is sparking up in my mind. It's giving me a renewed sense of joy. So I would look at EB1 as that. Look at EB1 as your marathon. Not because you want to be an Ironman, because it's something new. And if it's not your thing, give up. Nobody's holding a gun to your head and say, like, you have to do EB1. But take it out for a test drive. This is your call to step into the midlife existential crisis that is EB1.
definitely. Yeah, I think
Was that motivating? Was that motivating for it?
no, it is. It is. And again, you're right. It is. You're right that if someone is intentional and willing to take next step, they will definitely, after all this conversation, understand that the taking next step is important. And one thing also I would like to add is, when you start creating your own story, that is one of the best way to get motivated. I mean, I always have a lot of stories which help me to take certain steps. And also, when you do certain things, that experience spills over to someone something else in your life.
Oh, yeah, 1,000%. The bleeding effect is real. Why do you think I make content on LinkedIn? Because I have lost the ability to, as much as I say that, oh, I just want to chill, I've lost the ability to chill. It's just that I'm doing work that I like doing. But yeah, I'm very hyperactive. But you do it from a place of inspiration, no longer from a place of desperation.
Great words. Inspiration, not desperation. With that, first of all, the last thing is how people would contact you. What are the different mediums, so that if they would like to learn or need some more information?
Yeah. But first of all, thank you so much, Saurabh, for extending your platform to me. I think you're doing incredible work. And I know you were dropping off your kids and then coming back to this podcast and you have a full-time job. I'm like, man, this guy is doing a lot. So I thank you for lending me your platform. Just like Saurabh found me, I am the most vocal and the most active on LinkedIn. Sort of kind of put me on the spot by saying that I have a YouTube channel. I don't. I host webinars, and I just put unedited versions of those webinars on YouTube, and that has helped because I routinely bring immigration lawyers, immigration paralegals, people who have received their EB1s. I want to share their stories. I bring them up routinely to my platform on LinkedIn. I host them, and then I record that. People come in live, they ask questions, and I just upload that entire file on YouTube. But the best chance of you coming and saying hi to me is LinkedIn. And I read every message. So please come say hi. I need new friends.
Definitely, please. So that being said, Aditi, thank you so much for your time on this. I think, as I mentioned, that even through this podcast, if one person can start thinking and make a next step, that is a success itself. We don't want to move the mountains. We just have to move small stones or maybe throw at someone else. Just kidding. But anyways, so thank you again for your time on this. I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
And yeah, then we will, maybe if I come to New York City, we can grab a cup of coffee and discuss more about immigration or anything under the sun.
Do not count me in for a marathon. I am not running a marathon. I am very determined against that. I've run a 5K. It's enough for me. Thank you so much.
So that's fine. We are not running, but we can play guitar. So that's
Yes.
you
Yes.
can
I'd like that. I'd like that. Thank you again, Sarah.
Thanks so much. Yeah.